So I think that we're seeing increasing ability of Iran to carry out targeted retaliatory strikes, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of situation, leaving open the door for negotiation and also making it very clear that their capabilities still exist.
Good evening, everybody. 5 weeks ago, Jeff Steinberg sat down with the Heroes Path community and told you what was coming. He has been back every Friday since. Tonight, he comes back to a week that has compressed every contradiction of this war into a single 7-day sequence. An American F-15 was shot down over Iran this morning. One crew member has been recovered, and search and rescue efforts are still underway for the second. It's the first confirmed loss of a U.S. aircraft to hostile fire over Iranian territory in this conflict. Also this week, Iran destroyed an E-3 AWACS, one of the most valuable aircraft in our inventory, on the ground in Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. The Army Chief of Staff was fired mid-war today. The Iranian diplomat who was quietly arranging a face-to-face meeting between Tehran and Washington was struck at his home. His wife was killed, and he's died of his wounds. And Trump gave a nationally televised address telling the country the war's core objectives are nearing completion, and then threatened to bring Iran back to the Stone Age. The April 6th deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face strikes on its power grid is now 72 hours away. There's still no deal. There's no clear diplomatic channel left intact, and there's now an active search and rescue operation underway inside Iranian territory for that pilot. Jeff has watched wars come apart before. He's here to tell us whether what we're watching right now is controlled escalation or something that has slipped its tether. Jeff, the floor is yours. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, John. It's great to be back. And I think I really need to start out by repeating what's almost become a mantra over these last 5 weeks, which is that the best that we can look to at this point is a kind of a snapshot of the moment. The outcome of all of the fighting remains as uncertain at this point. As you pointed out, diplomacy is becoming more complicated by the fact that quite clearly the Israelis' objective is to basically eliminate anybody in the existing system who might be a viable point of contact to reach a deal with Trump. And so the Israelis' objective is very clearly absolute regime change, leaving nothing intact of the existing Islamic Republic system. And Trump, as the ultimate deal maker, is open to many different kinds of exit ramps that would be unacceptable to Israel for sure. Now we've got a changed situation in the region where one of the other, I think, really important developments of the week is the fact that Gulf Arab countries, nominally in the name of Bahrain, but really reflecting all of the GCC countries, went to the UN Security Council seeking a resolution authorizing the use of force to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. And going into the war, the Gulf Arabs were actually opposed to starting such a conflict because they were concerned that their own economic well-being could be severely jeopardized. But now that's proven to be the case. They've become more aligned with a kind of an Israeli maximalist view, namely that they really want to see a decisive end to this, in which effectively the existing Iranian system is taken down and permanently alters the dynamics in the region. The U.S., as stated by President Trump in his national TV address, for those who were able to follow it and fathom exactly what to take away from it, clearly is feeling a different set of pressures than those immediately in the region who are being subject to significant Iranian strikes that are causing already estimated hundreds of billions of dollars in damage to vital economic infrastructure, oil refineries, liquid natural gas facilities are being hit by the Iranians. And whereas President Trump made these absolutist claims in his TV address about the Iranian Air Force and the Navy being completely decimated, their missile capabilities greatly degraded, the Pentagon's estimate is that basically 50% of their capability has been destroyed, and the other 50% is being replenished through the fact that there are still production capabilities in place. So I think that we're seeing increasing ability of Iran to carry out targeted retaliatory strikes, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of situation, leaving open the door for negotiation and also making it very clear that their capabilities still exist. The Straits of Hormuz is a unique situation. I asked the Pentagon contact earlier today what his evaluation was of the ability of the Houthis to shut down access to the Red Sea on a sustained basis. And he said that that's not a capability, but that the Gulf Arabs and other countries that rely on trade through the Straits of Hormuz know that any ships crossing through there, unless there's a clear and enforceable understanding of a return to a free flow of commerce, any ship passing through there are sitting ducks. It takes 8 to 10 hours to transit, and it's a kind of a horseshoe-shaped route that requires traveling at extremely slow speeds. The Iranians' drone capabilities, their speedboat capabilities have already been demonstrated to be able to shut the straits and keep them shut. So Israel and the Gulf Arabs, looking from a regional security and economic standpoint, the United States is looking at this from the standpoint of the larger global picture of economics. And of course, President Trump is very much looking through the prism of November elections that are coming up very rapidly. The war is unpopular at home. Support, even among his soft supporters that gave him the presidency back in November of 2024, are basically jumping ship, whether they vote Democrat or simply stay home. In either case, the impact is going to be significant. And I think that Trump is becoming increasingly frustrated that members of his own cabinet have become liabilities to those elections rather than assets. So we had Christine Noem and now Pam Bondi both fired. The firings in the military are something quite different and may have a significant impact on how this ongoing military action proceeds.
Jeff, I'm sorry for interrupting you, because it wasn't only the Army Chief of Staff, General Randy
Right.
George, who stepped down, who was told to retire immediately. And by the way, he's a West Point graduate, graduated in 1988, served Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. But it was two other generals as well, General David Hotney and then Major General William Green. General Christopher Leneve, former Hegseth aide, is going to be serving as the acting Army chief. So these are dramatic changes within the Pentagon. And I totally agree that this signals something else beyond just frustration. It really represents a politicization of the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, that now called the Department of War. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely have a feeling that among the issues that precipitated this purge was the question of the view of the potential for launching ground operations against Iran.
Yeah.
Many retired military people, General Votel, who was CENTCOM commander, came out and said that this would be virtually a suicidal mission if there were to be Marines or 82nd Airborne or other units attempting to basically take even temporary control over Karg Island. So I'm sure that some of those issues are there. The other thing that looms in the back of my mind is the president's state of mind, which the speech the other night really triggered a lot of concerns. Are we looking at a factor of paranoia between him and Hegseth? Are we looking at something even analogous to the Stalin-Tukhachevsky purges back in the late 1930s? Hesitant to say that's the case, but the optics are very reminiscent. Under any circumstances, even just between last Friday when we spoke last and today, as I say, dynamics in the region have changed. It's likely that Russia, China, France, or some combination of them will veto the UN Security Council resolution, which is being renegotiated and reworked to see if there's some sort of softer language. But again, the persistence with which the Iranians have been able to hit the Gulf Arabs has virtually negated whatever sort of normalization process was underway over the last several years. Remember that the Saudis and the Iranians were hosted by Xi Jinping in Beijing about 18 months ago, and it was heralded as a sort of a breakthrough towards de-escalation of frictions within the region. That whole situation is now gone. And so I think that ironically and problematically, some of these changes in the views of some of the critical regional players suggests that this conflict is going to extend longer. And now there seems to be greater interest among the regional players who cannot be dismissed here, that something more fundamental in terms of a change in regime in Tehran is necessary. That can't be done without the United States, and I don't think that's the goal of Trump. There's a lot of economic and diplomatic fallout that could proceed from this new set of shifting dynamics.
I can't even think of a time. I really have been racking my brain, just looking back on history and asking myself, is there any precedent for this kind of senior military purge during active combat operation? And there probably is some examples. I can't think of them offhand, though. Can you?
No, not at all. Even the Tukhachevsky purges were on the verge of Europe breaking out into war. So it really was, certainly it was 3-4 years before Barbarossa. So it was not active combat.
It's really pretty dramatic on so many different fronts. And I heard that the United Kingdom is now leading 40 nations in this Hormuz summit that the U.S. didn't join, but you got Russia, France, China blocking, as you just mentioned, the Security Council authorization of force. And Iran's parliament is formalizing a toll collection all along as we speak. And my question, Jeff, is if the deadline arrives and the strait is still closed, what are the actual military options? It's going to be a very difficult military operation. And I think you could expect that probably as soon as this weekend.
Possibly. I think that sometimes you've got to take Trump at his word because it at least gives you a snapshot of his state of mind.
Yeah. These firings are an indicator, especially if they are due to an internal opposition towards ground operations. And oh, by the way, you've got the 82nd Airborne Division currently deployed in the Middle East under Army command. It points to an active will to launch that ground operation, doesn't it?
I think Trump's choice of the term bombing back to the Stone Age may be more of a likely point of escalation if there's any willingness to listen to the military experienced senior people who say that there's no parallel between the Venezuela kidnapping of President Maduro and seizing Karg Island or the other islands in the middle of the Straits of Hormuz, or attempting to locate and seize the enriched uranium.
Yep.
Those are things that will probably result in very high casualties beyond the 13 or so that have been acknowledged up till this point. So when Trump says bomb back to the Stone Age, I think that it's something that is under consideration.
Well, by the way, and right after that, the next day, the markets opened sharply lower the following morning after he said that. And Wall Street recorded its worst day of the war on April 2nd. But interestingly, too, that address came the same day as the Karzai strike. It came 2 days before the April 6th deadline, and it claimed progress while Pakistan, that was acting as the kind of the principal mediator, admitted that there were obstacles to peace. And so what were those obstacles? I think we can probably, in retrospect, see what they were.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jeff, there's so much more to talk about. Anything else that you'd like to add, and any predictions for the week ahead?
I think that this is one of those circumstances where predictions are folly.
Yeah.
There are too many wild cards. You're just dealing with a complete crapshoot.
Yeah.
With grave consequences.
Great consequences indeed. Jeff, thank you so much, and for everything, for all of your insights. We'll do this again next Friday if we can. What you just heard is where things stand on day 35. You have this American aviator that's still on the ground in Iran. They're actually doing a CSAR operation as we speak, looking for him. That AWACS that watched over this theater is on a tarmac in Saudi Arabia. Its radar dome completely destroyed. The man who was supposed to get Iran and Washington into the same room is now dead. The Army's top general was relieved by telephone while he was in a meeting with his own staff. And then we've got this weekend coming up. So the war's opening logic that air power alone could force an outcome is now an open question and in doubt. Iran's defenses were supposed to be gone. The AWACS said otherwise. Iran's leadership was supposed to be too degraded to execute precision strike. It did anyway. And the diplomatic track was supposed to be progressing, but Karzai's residents said otherwise. Here's what Hero's Path asks you to take from tonight. The hardest moments in any operation aren't when things go wrong all at once. They're when the picture you built to make sense of everything stops matching what you're seeing. That is the moment that demands the clearest thinking, not the loudest reaction. Jeff has given us an honest picture 5 weeks running, and we're going to have him back. Jeff, thanks again for joining us.
Okay, John, my pleasure.
Tonight's full session goes into the archive within 24 hours. I'm John Fenzel. Thank you for joining the Heroes Path podcast.